Hello everybody, welcome and welcome back. I hope everybody is doing good and keeping safe. So you're anxious when it comes to your language learning. It's normal, don't worry about it. In this video we're going to learn everything there is to know about what is called foreign language anxiety. You're going to learn what it is, what causes it, how it affects your language learning, and probably most importantly how to overcome foreign language anxiety. I suggest you watch until the end of the video in its entirety so you don't miss out anything. Okay, so let's jump right into the very first point. So what is foreign language anxiety? There are a number of different definitions that try to encompass all aspects of foreign language anxiety, but basically, language anxiety is the specific type of anxiety that is most closely related to the acquisition of a foreign language. And this can be defined as the feeling of tension and apprehension specifically associated with second language contexts, including speaking, listening, and learning. Does this ring a bell for you? Because it certainly does for me. And many learners are actually surprised to see how common this anxiety in language learning actually is. Many of us feel lonely and isolated when we experience such feelings. But I guess the question now is, what causes foreign language anxiety? There are three overall aspects of foreign language anxiety. That is communication apprehension, test anxiety, and fear of negative evaluation. It's safe to say that communication in a foreign language kind of involves a lot of risk taking. You don't have time to sit down and formulate the sentence, see which one's correct or what's the best form of the verb to use, etc., etc. You just need to leap and take the risk that the first thing that comes out of your mouth is actually the correct thing. So it's no surprise that McIntyre and Gardner found that speaking is actually one of the most anxiety-provoking and anxiety-inducing aspects of language learning. I know I have, but have you ever felt frustrated or really annoyed at yourself that you couldn't express yourself fully? This apprehension about communication due to past failures or past stumbles in the language has actually been documented in many different studies, and it's a lot more common than you might actually think. It's also not a huge leap to assume that when people are under highly evaluative conditions, such as tests, their anxiety levels spike dramatically. And if you are inherently a very anxious person, this can be quite a tough challenge for yourself, as these tests and regular evaluation is very, very common and necessary in language learning. You also might have experienced this language learning anxiety when you're being exposed to things that you just can't understand. Young 1992 noted that listening might generate anxiety if it were incomprehensible. For example, if whoever you're talking to, whether that be a teacher or another learner or a native speaker, if they're talking too fast and you can't keep up on what's being said, this can be very, very demotivating and quite anxious feeling of being lost in the language. Self-esteem and self-confidence also plays a huge role in language learning anxiety and can be really, really common in the language learning community, especially if you're surrounded by these highly influential polyglots from all over the globe at some, say, language conventions, for example. Bailey said that competitiveness can lead to anxiety when language learners compare themselves to others or to an idealized self-image. And even your own beliefs about the language and the language learning can cause anxiety or can be the root for this anxiety. Students may believe that the target language shouldn't be attempted unless accuracy is maintained, and you shouldn't try to speak it if it's going to be wrong. I'm sure you've all heard of the stories with Mandarin tones, how people have accidentally called their mom a horse, etc., etc. And this really scared me in the beginning. I didn't even speak a word of Mandarin for an entire month because I was afraid that my pronunciation would just be so horrible that it wasn't even worth it. How does foreign language anxiety affect your language progress? And without sounding like if you experience this language learning anxiety, you're doomed and it's never going to get better, a number of researchers have suggested that foreign language anxiety is a debilitating phenomenon that must be overcome by students in order for them to take full advantage of foreign language instruction. And yeah, by experiencing this foreign language anxiety, it does have knock-on effects in other aspects of your language learning. This is because people who experience language learning anxiety tend to refrain from speaking, refrain from translating words, or trying to understand things that they're not 100% confident on, and this will hinder your language learning process because you're essentially just evading practice. And with 1/2 of all language students experiencing language anxiety, this is a real problem because it can interfere with the acquisition, retention, and production of the new language. And now, obviously, all of these are very important. If anxiety impairs your ability to process the language, then if you feel anxious, you may be less likely to learn the language, and even more so, less likely to demonstrate what you have learned. And this could lead to even more failure in language. All in all, a very vicious cycle. So we agree, we hate language learning anxiety. Let's get rid of it as soon as possible. But how do we do that? How do we overcome this language learning anxiety? And this is the point you've either skipped to or have been waiting for. If you watched the entire video up to now, thank you so much. It really helps me out as a beginner YouTuber. And if you're liking it so far, consider subscribing down below before we skip into the next section, which is, so what's the answer? Well, there are actually a few things you can do to help this. None of them are going to fix it immediately, but over time, these tips and inherent progress in the language will make these anxious feelings when confronted with the language just fade away. Hopefully by now, you will have benefited already by watching this video from one thing that is shown to help, and that is you're not alone in this feeling. You're definitely not. It's way more common than you've probably thought. Even in one of the studies, a student said, "At first, I thought, my God, am I the only one who's getting nervous? The only one whose heart is beating, like pounding really hard. But now I know I'm not the only one." And knowing that other language learners experience this anxiety really helped me feel like part of a community and less isolated in my feelings. And I really hope this helps you guys too. If you're learning in a classroom environment and the teacher speaks too fast or doesn't use a lot of English, or if he picks on you for an answer and this makes you feel super nervous, and I know it's difficult, but it'll be so worth it in the long run if you just email them or if you approach them after class. And remember, if half of language learners experience this, you will not be the only one in your class who experiences this. So most teachers really want to teach you the language. And if you point out things that they're doing that are stopping them from helping you, I'm sure most of them will be more than glad to adapt the learning approach. If you're one of the people who think pronunciation is the most important aspect of the language and you shouldn't even try to speak or express yourself if you're not going to be accurate, or you're afraid of messing up, these are all things that are holding you back immensely, and you really just got to try and embrace them. I know this is easier said than done, so if you want to build up your confidence, try speaking in front of a mirror first. This can sound strange, but it is really good practice. Another thing you can do is even just to try and speak to Siri in the language, and it'll respond to you as well. I know it's not a real person, but it's a good stepping stone. Next, instead of moving into a group situation, you can go on one-on-one speaking by getting a language exchange partner on Conversation Exchange. It's a website. You can share your language between each other, like half an hour you are speaking one language and half an hour you're speaking the language they want to learn. Or you can go to italki and find a language learning teacher and have one-on-one sessions. These are really, really useful. Another benefit is that I have got a link in the description that gives you $10 of italki credit when you sign up. If comprehension and not understanding is your biggest cause of worry and concern in your language learning, then you need to incorporate as much listening practice as you can in your language learning routine and study time. I recommend watching children's TV shows in the target language or searching for YouTube channels which are aimed at language learners of that language, because they'll speak more clearly, they'll speak slower for you to understand, and it'll just build up your confidence and your ability to understand people. So hopefully the next time you're exposed to the language in a context that you would have found really, really stressful, it might not be so much anymore. Finally, you can practice expressing yourself by writing down journal entries on journaly.com. I've talked about this before. I think it's an amazing website, and you can write about whatever you want and be corrected by native speakers. For the most part, I've not seen anybody who hasn't benefited from this platform, because all of the people are very, very nice. The community is really helpful and very supportive that you're learning their language. And to repay the people who correct your work, if you speak the language they're trying to learn, you can correct theirs. The final thoughts of this video are this: foreign language anxiety is real and it's very common. It's normal. It feels like, but you can get over it. And I hope this video helped in some way. If it did, you can like the video and subscribe down below. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. And if you've made it this far, I have a question for you that you can answer in the comments. What is the thing that makes you most anxious or most nervous when it comes to language learning? And if you all read the comments and you find one comment that you can relate to, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and this just lets people know that You're not in this alone. There are other people who feel the exact same way as you. Bye for now, and in the meantime, you can watch the videos that will appear on your screen now.